Okay. All right, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Manley. I am the Director of Marketing at Canopy Studios. Canopy designs, builds, and supports websites for clients that want to make a positive impact. And we love web accessibility here at Canopy. So today's webinar is all the steps you can take to make your site more accessible. We are, in the interest of being accessible, doing a live transcription. If you want to check it out, that link is there in the chat. And you can actually see my words coming up in real time, which is sort of creepy to watch. I'm not gonna lie, it's very distracting. But yes, very cool for accessibility needs. So a bit about Donna, who is hosting today's webinar. Donna Bungard began her Drupal career as a designer and themer, and then transferred over to the project management side and strategy side of things over the years. Her range of skills and experience help her effectively lead teams as one of our support project managers. And she's also a certified professional in accessibility core competencies with the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. Since we're all very familiar with Zoom these days in the times of quarantine, there's a reminder for you that there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and anytime during the presentation, if you have a question for Donna, please enter it there. And when she's done her presentation, we'll address all of them at once. And so from here, I'm going to let Donna take it away.
That sounds great. Thank you, Allison. And yes, please feel free to ask lots of questions. So the idea behind this was to really just take accessibility and make it a little bit easier. I feel like a lot of the teams I'm talking to, they have a lot of end of year deadlines, and they're concerned about getting it all done, by a certain date or what have you. And I want to help make it easier, not only to get a site accessible, but to maintain it after. So really, this is a lot more of that long game. Okay, great. By December 1st, you had to get X, Y, and Z done. Now what? So this is what we're going to talk about today, the now what. As Allison mentioned, I'm one of the senior project managers here for the support team at Canopy. And I have alphabet soup after my name because I love to learn, and I love to understand how people think and act on the web. And you are here at one of our winter webinar series. Coming up, there's a bunch more wonderful things in the areas of strategy, UX, and all these beautiful things that really make your site have a big impact. So please go ahead, note those dates, check them out. Wonderful series ahead. But let's get into today. We're going to talk about, just some general recap of accessibility as a whole. Then we're going to kind of talk about the everyday. What do you do every day with the accessibility? And then monthly, and then annually, what are things to look for? What do we check? What do we have to do? So we can really just break this down into steps. So once you have a site, it stays accessible. And then at the end, we'll definitely be covering your questions. Please bring them on. I'd love to hear from you. So accessibility. We've all heard a lot about accessibility, especially in the last couple of years since the Winn-Dixie case down in Florida, where a site was, a company was held legally accountable for an inaccessible site because it was considered a portal to their brick and mortar location, just like any other doorway. So the idea of web accessibility is to consider your website your user's portal to your organization, and frankly to conversion, depending on however you define conversion, whether that be filling out a contact form, watching a video, or actually making a sale. A conversion is a conversion, and your website needs to remove as many barriers as possible for that effective user experience that's going to drive the success of your website. So accessibility is broken down into 4 general areas. It's cognitive, visual, audio, and mobile issues. And individuals who live with these different challenges experience the web in any number of different ways. I mean, how we interpret the world around us is very individualized anyway. And then when you add something on top of it that might put a skew on how you're able to perceive, operate, or understand content, well, that changes things. But over here, you'll see the italicized words. For example, under cognitive, I mentioned disabilities such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and dementia. But frankly, you can be distracted or having an emotional moment or having poor bandwidth. Now, and don't know about any of you, but we are currently homeschooling because COVID. And right now, the idea that I may be distracted or be sharing bandwidth with everybody in my household is kind of a realistic, well, it's a reality right now. A lot of users are finding that accessibility friendly sites are helping them because of their situations at home. I do not self-identify as disabled, but I assure you I am benefiting right now because just the logistics of juggling all the things. So in each case, you'll see that we have some very real day-to-day experiences that are covered and are accounted for when you're making yours and keeping your site accessible. And of course, there are different guidelines, different levels of the guidelines. That would be the World Wide Web Consortium, I can never say that right, has the WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, to guide us. And that is what Section 508 in the US, what C81 in Canada. I forget the bill in Great Britain, but there's all sorts of different countries that go ahead and use the WCAG AA standards as their way to go. So let's get past the review and into the meat of it. What are things that we should build into our everyday processes to make our websites more accessible? And really, it's about best practices. And if we keep on these every day, so for example, always make sure there is succinct, meaningful alt text on your images. Now, this means that saying person in chair probably isn't going to be of value. But if it's, you know, young student in chair with laptop and dog homeschooling, well, that gives you a much, much more concise idea or complete picture of why that might be important to a piece of content. Chart and table captions and summaries. The web is full of all this fantastic data, right? Think about all the charts you see on a regular basis. Not to keep referencing current events, but I do check the COVID charts in my area. I also see other tables of data and information, whether it be personally or professionally. Everything from when should I plant kale in my garden to what are the statistics and growth rates of certain keywords of evolving topics on the web. I'm a content strategist. I love that. All of this information is available, but as someone who is a non-sighted user, or perhaps just somebody who wants to get a quick idea of a summary of what am I going to really get for data out of this image, table, caption, chart, what have you. And I'm talking about a complex images, not the photo of the child on their laptop, but a complex chart or image of that nature or that table. By providing a summary, you're both giving a non-visual user and visual users who might be facing different challenges context as of, frankly, is it really worth digging into the data of this piece of information to get what I need, or should I just move on? So that's very valuable. Video captions and transcripts, as mentioned in the chat, and I'll just go ahead and repost the link one more time in case we had any latecomers. We have live transcription services going on right now through Thurston. I'm not going to watch this type up my speaking, but we have that going on. But video captions and transcripts, they help individuals whether they have experience auditory challenges or perhaps you're just in a crowded room. Regardless, they have incredible value. And there's also SEO value too, but let's stay focused on the user for today. Heading structure. I always say that heading structure is like that subway sign. Do you guys ever go into the subways? I'm up in New Hampshire, so typically I have to go to Boston before I hop on one. But you have that map at the top, and it tells you all the different stops. If the heading structure, if you can't see that, or if it gets all out of order, you're not really sure where you are or where you're going on that subway, and you're not sure maybe where to get off, right? Same idea with heading structure. If you're bouncing all over the place, your users might not know where they're going for information. So those have a lot of value to users of assistive technology to understand the value, the importance, and the overall structure and where they're going on your website. So make sure that they're in sequential order. So that means there's always one H1 on your page, never more than one H1, but then H2, H3, H4, and it's okay if you have H2, 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 H3, H3, then go back to H2. Always go back to H2. If you have to start over, an easy way of doing that is talk to your development team. Maybe your components always have H2 as the beginning of that component. So you're guaranteed to kind of start over in that sequence every single time. Descriptive links. Imagine if everywhere you're going, we'll go back to that subway sign just because it's a nice analogy, it said read more or get off here. Imagine your whole subway sign there says get off here. You're not really going to understand where you're going or why. So make sure your links are descriptives. You know, get to understand this wonderful thing about this widget we built. Underline the whole sentence. There's a lot of value you can provide users. And again, there's SEO value too. It gives SEO crawlers ability to go, but those users are going to be more likely to engage with your content if they understand why they should click on the link. Unique page titles. That is the big "you are here" sign. If they all just say your company name over and over on every page, then when a user is kind of flipping between tabs trying to remember what they're going for, they might not know what page they're on, or it's going to be difficult for them to necessarily know what page they're on your site if they're not a visual user. Reading level. Keep in mind, we're not only talking or just making the web easier for those with visual or auditory conditions or who experience that or challenges in those areas. We're making it for everybody. So make sure the reading level of your content is applicable for your users. Now, in terms of guidelines, this technically doesn't really come in too much until AAA. However, a rule of thumb for general websites is to get to the Fletch-Kincaid 9th grade reading level. It'll just appeal to a larger percentage of your users. That is for general. Now, if you're maybe a university science department who deals with neurosurgery, maybe you're not exactly going for 9th grade reading level in your personas. That's one of those reasons you have to just kind of know who you're talking to and why. But you always want to give context. It doesn't matter if you're using your verbiage, you're talking about alt text, you're talking about summaries of captions, all that stuff we're talking about, those descriptive links. The reason you're doing it all is to give context to your users of this is important and why. The why, it's the Simon Sinek, the reason, start with why. It's why are they here? What of their pains are you going to reach? Why? So give them context to answer that why. Always focus there. Then they'll go ahead to doing the things to get to conversion. They'll go along that journey. But start with context and then help them stay focused. Videos, they're cool. They are. But if you have auto playing, that can throw a lot of people off. And if you have a lot of activity in different things and a lot of really cool options on your site, that's lovely, except you might lose individuals. Individuals with ADHD. Imagine not being able to shut the sound off on all the radios in your house at the same time. you're constantly would be getting so much information, it would be difficult to tune in to just the one you're trying to hear. That's kind of like what a really busy site on the web would be like for a user who is experiencing challenges related to ADHD. So help them. Allow things to get shut off, or frankly, there's a lot of plugins out there for our Chrome extensions and what have you. Allow the user to shut them off, or make sure the user experience is great if that person is using a Chrome extension that's going to shut you off no matter what. Assume that information has to be able to go away, and make it easy for people to do it so they can stay focused. Your users, regardless of challenges, whether identified or not, regardless of those challenges, your users typically need to take a particular path to that conversion point. And again, I'm not always talking about sales, but that path has to be clear of debris, even if it's really cool stuff. And then you have to empower that path. When it comes to the end of the page, give them a next step. And again, not every conversion has to be this, woo, big macro conversion, go team, we sold something. Sometimes it's a small thing. Give them an option to watch or listen to a video. Give them an option to just read a blog post or another piece of related content. Give them maybe offsite content if it's of value of one of your partners or something. Give them somewhere to go that's not always the macro conversion. Give them small steps. Give them something to do. A big thing of that one of my pet peeves, I should say, since I've started with the whole screen reader testing, one of my pet peeves is blog articles that only have your social share at the top. Now, I'm listening to it and it says share, but I wouldn't share that because I haven't listened to the content. And then at the bottom, there's no cue for me to share. There's no reason. I've made this joke a few times, but seriously, there's no universe in which if I were in that position, would back tab up to the top to hit share. If you want your users to be able to interact with your site, to take that next step, make sure it makes sense for them to do it the way you're presenting it. Okay, monthly. So monthly, you're going to want to keep your fingers on the pulse of your site. You want to make sure little things aren't kind of snitching by too much. So automated tests. Now, automated testing has gotten a lot better. When I first started working in accessibility, it probably caught about 25%. We're up near 40 now. They're fantastic. And they're awesome because you can catch a lot of errors or any of those little slips with some automated testing. So let's talk about a couple of tools today that you can install right on your browser so you can take a look at how a site is performing. So we're going to talk about Wave, Axe, and Fungify. Wave is a great browser extension created by WebAIM. For a non-technical person who wants to review the site, this is really easy. It's telling you, how many errors there are, how many contrast errors, alerts. These are things that look weird to us. This is a fantastic tool. It's not going to get you deep into code or to the weeds. I mean, you can drill down to the code, but you don't necessarily have to go there. With that, though, you can get a feel for where you are. A side note, all automated tools can give you false positives from time to time. For example, recently there was a form with Ajax. So when a person with a screen reader would tab into the form field, all the labels would auto-generate due to the scripting. But all automated tests said it was broken because all the labels weren't there. It's because the automated test wasn't triggering all the stuff that happens. So if you get alerts or errors here, don't immediately stress, but they're good things to review and to check and to know about. And maybe it's something to discuss with your development team or with us. we're happy to just talk through it with you. Maybe we are your development team, but even if you have an in-house crew, give us a holler. We're happy to go through and verify those things. Now, Axe is a little bit more technical. It's made by DeQ, incredible accessibility specialists, and they have developed this tool to help really get development teams into the nitty gritty. Now, again, it can always come up with a false positive too, but it's going to tell you what the URL is, how many issues it found, what kind of issues it is, where in the code to find it. It's going to go a lot more granular. And this is fantastic for developers or those who just like getting into the code. And then there's Funkify. When you're training teams, one of the most important things I think is to train for empathy. Nothing in my professional career hit me harder than to see a native user use a screen reader. That was incredible. A native user is very quick. They are proficient, and they make any of the testing I do look like I'm still in training wheels, because this is what they do every day. It's the equivalent of just somebody speaking another language. I can speak a little bit of Spanish. Don't come up to me and speak to it and just saying I can. I'm not actually wanting a test, but I can speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Italian, but I can't have a conversation. I can do the testing on a screen, but I can't do it like someone else who does it with a screen reader, but I can't do it like somebody who does it every day. My ears are not trained to listen to input that's coming in that quickly. And I'd give you an example, but it might blow up the transcripts. It speaks fast. So what I've done is I found this amazing tool, Funkify, and it's persona based. And they have different personas with different challenges to help someone who doesn't experience those challenges on a regular basis build empathy. So over here on the left is the persona Blurry Blanca. And this persona obviously has blurred vision. Now, this is a mid-grade. They have different levels of severity you can work with. And this is mid-grade, but that severity level is making some of those words really hard to read. Over on our right is a dyslexic simulation. Now, this particular site doesn't have anything in all caps, but I have a feeling you might be able to imagine just seeing how those things are, why we keep saying, please don't use all caps anywhere, because it's much harder to read. And I realized I did not correct our company name up in the top. So that will actually get taken care of after. So schedule your testing into your process. Oh, this said annual, but that's all right. This was meant to be monthly. And so take a look at your key pages. Oh, I just went, why? That's why, because this is annually. So annually, schedule your testing. Go over key pages of your site. I usually look at Google Analytics, because as much as I want to have the pages that are most important to me be what I look at, and I'll probably look at them anyway because it's what I want to do, it really doesn't matter to me about me. It matters about users. What are the users using? What are the pages are they looking at? What is meaningful to them? So grab the first 10, 20 pages of that. Perform some voiceover testing on at least some of those pages. Schedule user testing, preferably native users and not only visually challenged, a visual challenge focus. So basically get users who are, yes, have visual challenges, but maybe people who use other assistive technologies too. That way you really, someone with a native user who may have a hand trimmer or something like that, really test your site for that complete user experience. And every year you should take a peek at your brand. Brands evolve. They do. They change over time, but sometimes a change made here can have a waterfall effect down below. And so look for ways to incorporate accessibility into your big picture. So look at your colors. Have there been any adjustments to your brand? Is everyone starting to use a lighter gray on white as this cool looking, nice, subtle effect? And is there text happening now because people started using the light gray? So maybe it waterfall down. Are your words you're using, the words your personas are able to understand as well as might use themselves? Is your message consistent and focused? And are you representing your complete audience? Inclusive, accessible, all of these things. Is your complete audience represented in your marketing? And a good way to make sure of that is to look at your personas. This Cornell University has a disability statistics tool, which I love when I'm working on personas, because you can kind of see how likely are these individuals going to experience this, or this. And you can kind of break it down. And then you can build your personas to maybe represent your audience more effectively. So, for example, here's a sample persona. And this is Howard Williams. He's a 65-year-old sales executive who's married to a gentleman named Jeffrey, has a household income of 102. Hobbies are guitar and wheelchair tennis. Okay, that's a complete, that has the psychographic as well as the demographic information. It's a nice little plump of the general intro of a persona before you get into those whole pain points thing. A mobility concern was built right into this. That it doesn't have to be hard. I feel like every time I'm talking, it doesn't have to be hard. So it doesn't have to be hard for you. I know I haven't left a ton of time for questions, but I'm psyched to hear them.
All right, thanks, Donna. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. But I have a question, Donna, just to kick things off.
All right.
What is the best way to involve people with disabilities in a user testing process?
Excellent question. The first important thing is pay them. You know what? You as an organization doing accessibility isn't charity. You know, the individuals who identify as disabled, there's statistics about $8 trillion of disposable income. It's not charity for you. So there's no reason it should be charity for anyone else. Pay them. There are different organizations out there. I know, like, for example, schools such as Perkins School for the Blind, I think Charleston School for the Blind also are two examples of organizations. Lighthouse has testing. Those are all visual. There's different companies that specialize in user testing, and those companies will do things such as recruit users with different challenges to help work on your site and to test it out. But just make sure you build it into your marketing budget, because it's frankly not inexpensive, but it's of high value.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And does anyone else have a question? Can sneak one in before we hit time here. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. Really appreciate it. We will be sending out the recording and the deck, and apparently now the transcript in a few days if you want to share it with others. As a reminder, if you do need help with your website, Canopy's here to help you. Just shoot us an email at hello@canopy.com and have a really wonderful, oh, I see one question right before I finish talking. Can we sneak it in?
Yeah, we can sneak it in.
Barry asks, supply meaningful alt text is a tried and true tip, but are there ways to actively encourage the person or team to supply this? How to encourage it outside of the audit cycle? Is there a way to force it into the process?
Excellent. Well, I make it a required field if you're in your CMS is probably the easiest way possible. Now, technically, someone might add a space or something. You can't do that. So it won't cover everything, but that's probably the number one easiest way. The number two is you should have a content style guide anyway. What words to use, what words not to use. Do you use the Oxford comma? All of these things should be in your marketing anyway. If you have that content style guide, it's key for content strategy, putting on that hat for a minute. But also you can give guidelines for your alt text. So for example, alt text, think of them like a tweet. They should be about the length of the tweet. They should get a bunch of information across, get people starting to think about it in that context and build it into your style guide. And between that and the required field, you hopefully will be set up for success.
Great. Awesome.
And in worst case scenario, make them use a screen reader and have that all read image 5432654 tons .jpg for about a half an hour. It's like the equivalent of giving a teenager a crying baby. It's very if you listen to a screen reader read some of these long, terrible image names a few times, that also drives it home.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. All right. Well, thank you, Donna. I appreciate that sneaking in that question at the last minute. And hopefully you all sign up for the next webinars, but have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.